The air inside the Galactic Council spire tasted sterile, purified to clinical perfection, yet somehow still thick with rot. Lyra Kale moved through it like smoke, her steps light, deliberate. Her cloak shimmered slightly, refracting the ambient starlight bleeding in through crystalline walls. Every few seconds, she passed a motion beacon embedded in the corridor, each one a whisper to the spire's central surveillance core. She had 37 seconds before the system recalibrated its scans. 37 seconds to vanish. She slid into a recess behind a vertical garden of blue leaf stalks, their bioluminescent veins pulsing with faint intelligence. From here, she could see the doors to the archive conduit chamber, sealed shut, guarded by a single Siliceth sentinel. Its form was fluid, an orb of tendrils wrapped around a levitating obsidian eye. It was scanning the air, sniffing for unfamiliar DNA strands. Not yet, she thought. Too early. Her heart pounded with a low ache she trained herself to ignore. She breathed slowly, counting backward. 37. 36. 35. The Galactic Council spire was a miracle of design. 100 kilometers high, suspended in a Lagrange orbit around Vatrax 9, it housed over 200 sentient species. A living monument to diplomacy, or, as Lyra preferred to think of it, an altar of bureaucracy where truths came to die. Humans were no longer welcome here. By order of Omega Red, they were a forbidden species. Illegal. Extinct in everything but biology. She touched the hidden interface at her wrist. The skin-thin screen flickered to life, relaying a top-down schematic of the archive chamber. She marked 3 paths, each riskier than the last. She tapped the third. The impossible one. Running out of time, she whispered. A voice hummed in her ear, modulated alien. You always choose the hardest path. It was Krenna, her underground contact and maybe the closest thing she had to a friend. Because it's the one they'll least expect, Lyra replied. She pulled out a coin-sized capsule and rolled it between her fingers. Inside it, a mimic spore squirmed, engineered to replicate the scent signature of a Vord emissary. She tossed it. The spore hissed, expanded, and vanished into the vents. The sentinel stirred. Its central eye pulsed red. It drifted away from the archive door, tendrils twitching. Now. Lyra darted forward, pressed her palm against the console. The interface rejected her touch, then shimmered with a brief flicker of green. Her clearance was outdated but not forgotten. A relic buried deep in the spire's ancient systems. The doors peeled open. She stepped into darkness. The archive conduit was nothing like the spire's public galleries. It was colder, quieter. Endless rows of memory spires loomed like obsidian thorns, each one humming with compressed history. Here, truth wasn't debated, it was stored, encrypted, buried. Lyra moved quickly. Her target was deep in the Omega Wing, restricted access. She had no intention of accessing it through approved means. That was the problem with the Council. They always assumed rules were enough to keep chaos out. She reached a data tap port and slid a neurofilament into it. The thread wormed forward, interfacing directly with the archive's subconscious layer. Directive Omega Red, she muttered. Authorization, Kale, Civilian ID 712 Charlie. The system paused. Then, access denied? Clearance level erased? Lyra smiled grimly. Figures. She reached into her belt and pulled out a shard, a sliver of code stolen from a burned-out node in the Mars archive before it was vaporized. She inserted it. The system shuddered, flickered. A stream of data surged across her lens. She found it. Omega Red, Vector Expulsion Decree. In response to the ideological volatility of Homo sapiens and the unpredictable, mimetic contagion observed across multiple Concord civilizations, the Galactic Council hereby classifies the human vector as a Tier 0 anomaly. All colonies are to be dismantled. All human entities are to be neutralized. Order passed, unanimous. Executive override, authorized by Warden Threx Ulverin. Her breath caught. Executive override? It wasn't a unanimous vote at all. Threx had lied. The ruling had been forced through, illegally. And buried. You seeing this, Krenna? She whispered. Loud and clear, the voice replied. But you need to move. You just tripped a beacon. Of course she had. She ripped the filament out and bolted. Outside, red emergency glyphs lit the walls. The sentinel was gone, but new footsteps echoed down the corridor. Heavier. Rhythmic. Council enforcers. She sprinted down the left corridor, triggering her cloaking field again. It sputtered, flickered. She cursed under her breath. The field wouldn't hold. A doorway loomed ahead, sealed. She slammed her palm against it. Nothing. She grabbed the seam, wedged her boot in, and shoved. It creaked open just enough. She squeezed through, boots scraping metal. Inside was a maintenance shaft. Narrow. Wet. And not empty. A figure stepped forward, tall, armored, visor gleaming like polished obsidian. His voice cut through the darkness. Lyra Kale. She froze. I thought it was you, he said. You always did favor the vents. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat was a fist. Kalen. Her brother. You look different, he said, stepping closer. But I knew. Even before the AI flagged the trace. You still breathe like a human. His voice was calm, but she saw tension in his stance. The twitch of his fingers near the pulse rifle. I'm not here to fight you, she said. No. You're here to steal state secrets. Again. Lyra held her ground. You know what they did. What he did. I know what we did to stop the spread. She took a step forward. We were diplomats, Kalen. Explorers. We uplifted species, preserved cultures. You infected them. Silence. Finally, he lowered the rifle slightly. You have 1 minute before the others arrive, he said. Whatever you're planning, don't. She turned and fled without a word. Down the shaft, into shadow. Her boots splashed through coolant runoff. The world narrowed to breath and momentum. Behind her, the spire's alarms faded. Ahead, a faint green glow blinked from a hidden transrelay, a backup node. Lyra tapped her wrist and uploaded the stolen data. Compressed. Fragmented. But enough to tell the truth. Just before the link closed, she spoke into the recorder. To the Concord. To anyone still listening. My name is Lyra Kale. I am human. And this is what they didn't want you to know. She severed the connection. And disappeared into the dark. The lights inside the tunnel pulsed faint green, barely illuminating Lyra's path through the substructure beneath the spire. Every few meters she passed a rusted vent or a corroded valve, abandoned systems left from earlier construction phases, forgotten by most, but not by those who survived on scraps and shadows. She slid behind a collapsed strut and pressed her back against the wall, heart racing. Her wrist display flickered. Connection to the council net severed. Backup relay dark. But the data packet had gone through. She exhaled. A moment of relief. Not safety. Krenna, she whispered. Status? Nothing. Just static. She tried again, voice lower. Krenna, respond. A burst of feedback answered her. Not interference, scrambling. Someone was jamming the signal. Lyra gritted her teeth and pushed forward. She emerged into an old storage chamber. Low ceiling, crates stacked like bones, the air metallic and stale. In the corner, a dim screen blinked with life. She approached slowly, brushing away a veil of dust. A prompt appeared, input authorization. She hesitated, then keyed in her old Concord liaison code. LK712C6. To her surprise, the screen lit up. An interface unfolded. Not just archived records. A restricted vault. She selected the latest entry under the Omega Red directive. The screen shimmered, displaying a high-altitude drone feed, grainy, time-stamped 2 years prior. The target, Gliese 1214b, a terraformed colony classified as defunct. Lyra's mouth went dry as the footage played. Dozens of human settlement domes blinked like stars across the valley. Children ran between buildings. Flags flew, faded by radiation, but still visible. Then, incineration. From orbit. A burst of white heat erased the image. No alarms. No warnings. Just silent extermination. The camera caught a name burned into the outer wall of a school before it dissolved in flame: Kale Learning Center. Her mother's name. She leaned forward, hands gripping the terminal. "This wasn't a war zone," she murmured. "No soldiers. No resistance. Just settlers, civilians, scientists, families." And Threx had signed off on it. Behind her, metal scraped against stone. She spun, hand on her stun rod. A small figure stepped from the shadows, scaled, insected, cloaked in woven synth fiber. Two black eyes blinked at her slowly. A Marukan. Low caste, wingless, non-vocal. He tilted his head and extended a hand. In his palm, a shimmer disk. Lyra took it and slotted it into her wrist console. A hollow projection flickered on, raw code, time-stamped metadata, vote tallies. Omega Red, voted unanimously, public record. Override injected, Warden Threx Ulverin, 3:19 Spire time. She stared. The override was buried, unauthorized, spliced into the record post-vote. Not unanimous. Not even legal, she muttered. The Marukan buzzed softly and touched his chest. Then pointed upward, to the spire's higher levels. "You want me to bring this to the council?" she asked. "They'll erase you just for knowing this exists." The Marukan nodded once. Then vanished into the shadows. Outside, sirens began to wail again, shrill and sharp this time. Not routine scans. A full sweep. They knew. She needed an exit route. The spire's blueprints were in her implant. Several had changed over the years, but the emergency tunnels were likely untouched. She plotted a course toward a decommissioned transit ring near the judicial annex. If she could reach it, she'd disappear into the civilian zones. Before she could move, her display buzzed. A message. "Stay where you are." The sender tag made her blood run cold. Kalen Kale. She bolted, ducking through the far doorway into a stairwell choked with dust. She vaulted the railing, landing 2 floors down, boots slamming onto rusted metal. Footsteps echoed above, quick, purposeful. She turned a corner, collided with a field wall, and nearly lost balance. A towering figure blocked the corridor, armored, rifle in hand. Kalen. He raised the weapon but didn't fire. "I could have shot you an hour ago," he said. "Why didn't you?" Lyra asked. "I was hoping you were someone else." He stepped closer. The rifle stayed aimed but slack. "I watched that feed," he continued. "The one from Glee's. You knew about it?" "I knew about the order. Not the execution." She stared at him. "And that makes a difference to you?" He didn't answer. The air between them thickened. "You remember the Kale Center?" she asked. "I remember Mom built it with her hands. It's gone. They erased it. Just like they're erasing us." Kalen looked away, jaw tight. "They're afraid of us," Lyra said. "But they're more afraid of losing control. That doesn't make them wrong." She stepped forward. "Are you hearing yourself? You serve them. They murdered our people. Our family. I serve the Concord," he said, but his voice cracked. Silence stretched. Finally, he lowered the weapon. "You're going to try to go public with this. I already have. You'll be killed before you reach the council floor." Lyra's eyes locked with his. "Then help me." "I can't." "You mean you won't?" He took a breath. "There's a difference." Footsteps thundered from above, more enforcers. Kalen looked back, then tossed a small emitter toward her feet. It rolled and activated, casting a cloaking field. "This won't fool heat sensors for long," he said. "Use it. Get out." Lyra hesitated, eyes narrowing. "Why?" "I don't know," he said. "Maybe I just needed to see you again." Then he turned and walked toward the noise. The last thing she saw was his silhouette raising his rifle. She waited 3 heartbeats. Then she ran. The emitter cloaked her movement as she darted into the transit shaft. A side panel blinked with faint energy, a maintenance route still functional. She pried it open and slipped through. As she climbed into the crawlspace, the spire's internal comms roared overhead. By order of the Warden, Security Protocol TRX Zeta is now in effect. All unauthorized access shall be met with lethal force. Lyra smiled grimly. They were scared. Good. Deep inside the crawlspace, she pulled up the override data, encrypted it, and set it to deploy via a delayed trans beacon. One burst would send fragments of the truth to fringe colonies. Enough to sow questions. Enough to light a spark. She stared into the screen one last time. The final line of the Omega Red directive blinked. Erasure must be absolute. She tapped the screen. Too late, she whispered, and kept moving. The spire's underbelly trembled with energy as Lyra moved through it. Rumors traveled faster than data, her name already whispered in hidden corners and recycled air vents. Some called her the last human. Others, the ghost of Earth. She didn't care what they called her, only that someone was still listening. She entered a disused docking chamber, its lights dim, air dense with oil and ozone. This place had once been a port for minor cargo hauls. Now, it was a graveyard of forgotten crates and silent loaders. She passed a shattered info kiosk with a flickering image of the Concorde's emblem, tarnished, cracked through the center. A soft hiss echoed ahead. She froze. From the gloom, a figure stepped into view, armored, but the helmet removed. Kalen. He set the helmet on a crate and leaned against the wall, rifle holstered. You didn't run. I did, Lyra replied. I just knew where you'd be. He gave a tired nod, as if the weight of his own decisions had grown heavier. You shouldn't be here, he said. No one should be. But here we are. They sat across from each other on overturned storage bins. Kalen offered a ration pack. She declined. I thought you were dead, he said after a moment. You tried to make sure of it. No. That order came from above. I followed the data. She laughed, dry, humorless. And the data told you to cleanse entire colonies? His jaw clenched. I didn't press the orbital strike. I enforced protocols. There's a difference. There isn't when you're on the ground watching families disintegrate. Kalen flinched. Silence fell again. She leaned forward. You saw the override? I did. I verified it. And I still don't know what to believe. They locked eyes. Threx bypassed protocol. He twisted the Council's decision, she said. You read the logs. That wasn't a legal decree. It was manufactured. Manufactured or not, Kalen replied. Human expansion was destabilizing dozens of systems. Your memes infected Ilari elders. Your music rewired Vost engineers. You made entire species question their foundations. Culture isn't a virus. To them it is. Lyra stood. So what? You'd rather be sterile than free? I'd rather have order than collapse. That's not order. That's fear. Kalen's silence was an answer. She pulled a small shard from her jacket, an encrypted key encoded with Threx's voice signature. I have his command string, she said. A confession buried in system memory. He looked at the shard, then at her. You plan to present this? In open tribunal. They'll kill you before you reach the podium. Maybe. But they'll hear it first. Kalen stood slowly. His armor hissed at the joints. You're outnumbered. No faction supports you. I don't need a fleet. I need an audience. She turned to leave. He caught her arm. You still believe this can be fixed? I believe truth breaks louder than lies. Kalen looked away. You once said ideas outlive guns, she added. Prove you still believe it. He didn't answer. She pulled free and walked to the exit door. Before stepping through, she paused. I'm not asking you to fight, she said. Just stop pointing your weapon the wrong direction. Then she was gone. Above, the spire moved like a living thing. Drones glided past open galleries. Species of every shape and configuration gathered in preparation for the tribunal session. The warden had called for a public hearing, officially to condemn terrorism, but unofficially to make a statement: humans were extinct. Their remnants would be put on display. Lyra moved through service corridors and maintenance ladders unseen. Cloaked not by tech but by knowledge of the spire's old veins and blind spots. Near the judicial annex, she emerged into a utility alcove. A group of small, cloaked figures waited. Sympathizers. A six-limbed Tivani slipped her a disc. Your speech node. Lyra nodded and placed the disc at the base of her throat. It synced to her vocal cords. You have less than 10 minutes, the Tivani warned. Lyra stepped into the lift shaft. As it rose, the spire hummed around her like a great, waiting beast. In the council chamber, High Warden Threx stood at the center of a grand amphitheater. His long frame cast a narrow shadow. He raised a clawed hand. Today we address a dangerous anomaly, he declared. A remnant of a predatory vector. A species that once spread across stars like fire through dry fields. On cue, a squad of enforcers dragged Lyra through the main gate, her wrists bound. The room buzzed, not in outrage, but curiosity. Threx turned. Do you deny being human? No. Do you admit to infiltrating council systems? Yes. Murmurs rippled. Do you accept responsibility for the unauthorized release of classified materials? I do. Then you admit your crimes. I admit exposing yours. A projection screen behind her flared to life. A voice echoed, cold, certain. Threx's voice. The council will hesitate. I won't. Override the vote. Push Omega Red now, before the colonies replicate again. The room stilled. Threx's face darkened. Forgery. Kalen's voice rang out from the crowd. It's authentic. Verified by Enforcement Corps. All heads turned. He stepped forward, helmet off. She tells the truth. Gasps spread. Some delegates stood. Others demanded silence. Threx snapped. You are compromised, Kalen Kale. Blood ties have clouded your judgment. I obey the Concord, Kalen said, stepping onto the floor. But the Concord does not obey you. The chamber erupted. In the chaos, Lyra turned toward the cameras, beaming the tribunal live across hundreds of stations. She spoke plainly. We're not gone. You buried us, but we seeded the soil first. The truth is out now. You can outlaw a species, but you can't outlaw memory. Threx screamed a command. Security drones activated, weapons primed. Kalen stepped in front of her, arms raised. So did 2 others. Then 4. The council lost control. Lyra looked around, saw the split forming. Saw fear cracking into doubt. And for the first time in a long while, she smiled. Lyra stood at the center of the tribunal floor, ringed by silence so thick it felt like pressure on her chest. The broadcast lights had shifted from interrogation red to neutral white. The spire's highest court, a sweeping half-sphere suspended over a web of plasma conduits, had become the eye of a gathering storm. High Warden Threx didn't move. His talons tapped slowly against the armrest of his elevated platform, every tap a threat barely contained. Behind Lyra, Kalen remained standing, flanked now by 2 more Concord enforcers, non-human, but unmoving. Watching. He had made his choice. The line had been crossed. Across the chamber, delegates murmured. Some furious. Others uncertain. A few, quietly intrigued. This was no longer a sentencing. It was a reckoning. Threx rose, his voice amplified by the spire's acoustic field. These recordings, he said, gesturing to the still hovering projection of his own voice giving the override command, are fabricated. Spliced with expert precision. That the accused brother verified them means nothing. He turned to the crowd. We are under siege. Not from weapons, but from stories. Myths. Deceptions. Lyra stepped forward. Then let's finish the story. Her voice rang clear, not loud, but sharp enough to cut the tension. You outlawed us. Called us corrupting. Unstable. Dangerous. And yet, your stations run on human code. Your medical breakthroughs rely on gene maps we offered. Your deep thought networks use logic systems we taught you to optimize. She paced once, slow and steady. You erased our presence, but not our footprint. You feared we'd rewrite your futures. But the truth is, we already had. The silence deepened. Kaelin handed her a projection node. She activated it. A rotating stream of planetary names spun above her: colonies, moons, fringe settlements. 57 surviving human enclaves, she said. Independent. Scattered. Peaceful. Most of them interbred. Hybrid cultures. Half of them governed by councils made of your own kind. A pause. Then, you didn't erase us. You made us everyone. Gasps rippled across the room. Threx raised a claw, talons quivering. They destabilize every society they touch. Turn order into infection. Lyra held his gaze. We don't destabilize. We inspire. The difference scares you. The floor lit up beneath Threx's feet, an override prompt. He growled. Security, detain all traitors. Drones ignited around the chamber. Stun beams charged. Lyra raised her hands but didn't flinch. Kaelin moved. So did the other officers beside him. Then 3 more. Then 5. One by one, they stepped between her and the drones. A Tivani officer deactivated her own weapon and tossed it aside. Not today, she said. Delegates began to stand. Some shouted in protest. Others pointed fingers. A few started leaving. Chaos surged. Not an explosion, but fragmentation. The illusion of unity fracturing in real time. Threx descended the stairs from his platform, slow and deliberate. You think a few sympathizers will preserve your kind? He hissed. I don't need to be preserved, Lyra replied. We're already part of you. You just never looked closely enough. He drew a blade from his side, a ceremonial one, curved and black. You should have died on Earth. She didn't move. You already buried us once. And yet I'm here. Threx struck. Kaelin blocked the blade mid-swing with his forearm plate, the clang echoing like thunder. The impact sent him staggering, but he didn't fall. I won't let you do this, he said through clenched teeth. You're too late, Threx spat. No, Kaelin said. You are. Threx raised the blade again. A sudden crack rang out. The Tivani officer had fired a stun bolt. Threx fell, convulsing. Delegates screamed. Others rushed forward. It was over in seconds. The warden of order lay twitching on the tribunal floor, silenced by those who once obeyed him. Lyra lowered her hands. Kaelin was bleeding where the blade had caught his arm. She moved to him. That wasn't the plan. He grimaced. Your plans never go according to plan. A weak smile tugged at her mouth. Still worked. The chamber lights dimmed. A voice filled the air, automated, ancient. Executive override nullified. Omega Red directive suspended pending full Concord inquiry. The entire spire seemed to breathe. Then the broadcast ended. They didn't stay for the aftermath. Others would argue the fine points. Craft new orders. Rename old crimes. Lyra had no interest in bureaucracy. She walked the edge of the spire's docking wing, Kaelin beside her, arm patched and wrapped. A few officers followed. No words passed between them. The Marukan envoy waited near a shuttle, silent, wings folded. He nodded once. You knew this would happen, Lyra said. The Marukan clicked softly. Then pointed to the stars above. Kaelin stared at the horizon, curved, endless, wrapped in light. You think they'll forgive us? He asked. No, she said. But they'll remember us. And that's enough. They boarded the shuttle. No ceremony. No declarations. Just departure. Behind them, the council spire remained, gleaming, wounded, watching. Ahead, the open galaxy. Unwritten. Unafraid.